With the WINN FM News, I am Kevin Brown.
And I am Yulana Weeks.
Our top stories.
The daughter of Nevis's first premier and national hero reminds St. Kitts Nevis citizens of her father's quest for secession.
Safe harbor to expand marina. St. Kitts Nevis Prime Minister says work has already started.
St. Kitts Nevis national heroes honored at the 2025 National Heroes Day ceremony. Dr. Denzel Douglas urges the citizens of St. Kitts Nevis to protect and nurture the legacy of Sir Robert Bradshaw.
Guyana more concerned about drug flights and sea trafficking. CARICOM building code revision. Stakeholders meet to discuss energy efficiency. Internationally, the European Union proposes suspension of trade concessions with Israel over Gaza war.
Now, the details.
The daughter of Nevis's first premier and a celebrated national hero reminded the people of St. Kitts and Nevis of her late father's dream of full independence for Nevis through secession. Speaking at a cultural event honoring her father's legacy and that of the four other national heroes of St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. Janice Daniel Hodges said, while the island has made progress over the years, there is still much work to be done to achieve true self-determination, which was the wish of her late father, the Right Excellent Sir Dr. Simeon Daniel. She recalled that her father, who was a founding member of the Nevis Reformation Party, had long championed the idea of Nevis standing on its own. According to her, his vision was for Nevis to govern itself without external interference and to build an economy that is self-sustaining and resilient.
My father would have, as Washington Archibald would have said, blinked for a moment, and his quest for secession was put on the back burners. He would tell you that he never gave up the quest for secession, but he understood what it means to put country above self. And he did what he thought was in the best interests of the country when he joined the coalition with the PAM party back in 1980. By 1983, our country became independent, but he still felt, and I know that he died with a heavy heart, knowing that Nevis never did realize its full potential to be able to control its own destiny. I don't think that I need to make a clarification on his behalf, because while he would have started with the quest for secession, he ended up wanting Nevis to be able to determine its own destiny, to minimize reliance on external sources. External sources, even if within the same country and in St. Kitts. And so for him, there is still work to be done in order for us to fulfill that dream for him so that Nevis can be self-reliant and determine its own destiny.
Dr. Daniel Hodges' remarks were made at the event Legacy of the Nation at the National Heroes Park on September 16, 2025, in celebration of the country's 42nd Independence Celebration, September 19, and National Heroes Day, September 16. Though not a bread and butter topic in the public domain, the talk of secession for Nevis is slowly rekindling, fueled by the passage of the August 11 Special Sustainability Zone Authorization Bill and the heated discussion about Southeast lands in Nevis. Moreover, Prime Minister Dr. Terence Drew's call for him not to be included in Nevis's land debate ruffled the feathers of some people who purported that the Prime Minister is trying to dissociate himself from the matter, though the act stands in his name.
I am simply saying that I have nothing to do with the land in Nevis. The Constitution tells me clearly, Prime Minister, the lands in Nevis are to be administered by the Nevis Island. So I keep out of that. So I hope that the discussion on Nevis and they can resolve their matter. Where I come in is that the federal government is responsible for national security, immigration, customs, citizenship, and so forth. So if Nevis were to set up something that violates any of those, then I wouldn't step in to seek to manage Nevis's land. I will step in to say, you have violated the custom laws, you have violated the immigration laws, you have violated national security laws. You have violated our border security laws, the border, not the land itself. So if the Nevis Island Administration and the Premier has a particular project, where I come in and the federal government comes in is to make sure that these laws that I just mentioned that are on the purview of the federal government are not violated. Outside of that, I will please ask the people to please keep me out of that. The Constitution tells, this is why I'm not commenting on it. Keep me out of that, because I will not be accused of trying to take over Nevis's land. Let them settle over their land matter. When that comes to me as a project, I will look at it from the perspective of the laws and what is under my purview and the federal government's purview, and make decisions on those. So if you can't bring to me that this special zone is going to violate any of these, it has nothing to do with me. As a matter of fact, I'll say, well, that is what Nevis chooses to do with their land. The federal government is not in a position to stop them or encourage them or anything like that. The federal government just looks over what is under its purview, and Nevis handle its resources. So that is where that is. So I would really ask people to really keep me out of that argument that is taking place at Nevis. The Constitution tells me to keep out, and I will keep.
For several years, some have agreed that greater autonomy would benefit Nevis, while others have cautioned that secession could bring significant economic and diplomatic challenges. St. Kitts and Nevis's constitution highlights that there would need to be a referendum on secession, with a 62% in favor of it.
In May 2025, the sale of Christophe Harbour Marina to Safe Harbour Marina was announced, with a subsequent announcement that Safe Harbour would be expanding the marina to accommodate even larger super yachts. The Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, the Honourable Dr. Terence Drew, was asked during the September 12, 2025 broadcast of the Roundtable if any work had started on that particular project as yet.
Yes, they have actually started their work. So they're in the process of procuring all that they need. They have sent, they're putting all of that together. This is going to be one of their biggest bases within the Caribbean region. We're expecting a very upscale, vibrant yachting season in November, because they're going to start doing business in November. We needed more immigration officers. We needed more customs officers. We're actually going to be putting a base over in Christophe Harbour, customs officers and immigration officers, to make sure that they're complying with the laws that they should comply with in terms of, what should be done. So we are ramping up from the government's point of view, and also from the business of yachting point of view as well. And that is already providing jobs for our people. And we want that to become a premier yachting destination in the Caribbean, part of our efforts to diversify the economy.
Dr. Drew used that as an opportunity to appeal to the youth on the Federation who are seeking gainful employment to take advantage of the opportunities presented through the expansion of the marina on the Southeast Peninsula.
My message to our young people is to get these jobs. Because the reason why we are providing these jobs, we don't want our young people to be on STEP and so forth, because those things don't. STEP is a training program, does not allow our people to fully actualize themselves. So even though we'll have a number of people on STEP, we want to provide even better opportunities for our people once you get to training to move on. Because these jobs don't pay minimum wage. They pay way above minimum wage. That is why we have started TVET. And I want to thank the Minister of Education, the Honorable Dr. Jeffrey Hanley, who was determined that TVET must be established in St. Kitts and Nevis. He himself, who is a career teacher and understands the importance of education, that the first graduation of TVET was had just recently. That certification that those young people get, or those people got, that allows them to work in any CARICOM country even, with that certification. They can travel. This is a serious certification. So we want our people that, and it allows you to get your certification quicker. So let's say you are a skilled person in, let's say, masonry. You come to TVET. TVET help you in 6 months. You can have your certification as a mason. So when you show up for a job here or anywhere, you show up certified with an NVQ, a CVQ. That is very serious and empowering. So our young people who are not interested in the academic side of things and they want to become a plumber, we are now going to have it as an institute, not just have it. It will be an institute because it will be given certification that is regionally accepted and respected. And the reason why we want to do that is that look at the civil service. The civil service is set up in a way where plumbers can't be what you call appointed to the civil service. That will change. The same way you could go to college and get a university degree, and that is excellent. We want more people to go. And you decide you want to go down the academic path. Well, what happened to our people who want to go down the vocational training path? They too must have the opportunity to be appointed in the government. The government needs plumbers too. The government needs electricians. The government need masons. And for too long, those in these technical fields were treated as second class. And we will end that.
In 2007, the government entered into a development agreement with Christophe Harbour and transferred rights to the developers for the seabed, including the area now occupied by the marina. The arrangement, which granted the developers significant autonomy and legislative protection, has been criticized as a move that gave too much control to foreign interests and created a mini-republic within a republic. Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, the Honourable Dr. Terence Drew, in response, expressed that the Constitution has a mechanism that would allow the government to reclaim marine assets under certain stipulations.
So I wasn't a part of that agreement, but as you say, it was leased within our laws at any point. And that is what His Excellency Sir Robert Llewellyn Batcher used when he took back all of the land in the 1970s. At any point, if anybody who is leasing our land, anybody who lives on our land, seek to violate our Constitution, the Constitution itself has the mechanism to correct that. So let's say Christophe Harbour is misusing the land over there. We can go over there and take back the land. You sure eminent domain, you are aware. So we have an aspect in our Constitution that speaks to eminent domain. Eminent domain even allows me to come for your land if you have land here. If we think that your land is violating the larger national security matter. So I am not so worried about whether they're leasing the land for a year or two. What I do know is that within the Constitution is that at any point, anybody who violates any of our laws, and we need to take back the land, eminent domain allows us to go and just seize it. And so, in a deeper sense, you don't want to use that haphazardly and so forth, but you keep monitoring to make sure that what you say you use it for, you are using it for. And at any time, our government determine that there's a broader, better use of land, compensating people, of course, that they should be compensated. They should not be put to a loss, that we can acquire that land or that space to do. Exactly. So we have a mechanism.
As part of the acquisition, Safe Harbour now has control of the marine assets and operations, while the remainder of the Christophe Harbour development remains with the original developers.
The Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. Terence Drew, on behalf of citizens and residents, paid tribute to the Federation's greatest visionaries during the annual National Heroes Day celebrations held at the National Heroes Park on September 16. The event was attended by citizens, dignitaries, and community leaders who gathered to honor the extraordinary contributions of the country's 5 national heroes: Sir Robert Llewellyn Bradshaw, Sir Caleb Azariah Paul Southwell, Sir Joseph Nathaniel France, Sir Dr. Simeon Daniel, and Sir Dr. Kennedy Alphonse Simmons. Prime Minister Drew expressed that the legacies of the national heroes have shaped the island's history, and their immense sacrifices made, their vision and courage laid the foundation for the freedoms and progress enjoyed today.
Today, beneath the skies of our beloved Federation, we gather to honor the lives and legacies of our national heroes, our brave countrymen whose courage, sacrifice, and unyielding vision charted the path to the St. Kitts and Nevis we know today. We are not only here to lay wreaths at their memorials, but to lay our hearts before them in gratitude for the timeless gifts of freedom, dignity, and nationhood. This year, as we mark the 42nd anniversary of our independence, under the theme Perpetual Progress, a Sustainable Future in View, Independence 42, we are reminded that the struggle of our national heroes was never for themselves alone. It was for generations yet unborn. It was for us. Their vision was not bound by their time, but stretched toward the promise of a resilient, prosperous, and united people.
The leader spoke about each national hero, recounting their individual impacts on the Federation. He first highlighted the first national hero, a freedom fighter, Sir Robert Llewellyn Bradshaw. Attention then turned to the contributions of the other heroes, including the living statesman who played a role in seeing the Federation into independence, Sir Kennedy Alphonse Simmons.
Our national heroes together form the pillars upon which our Federation stands. From Sir Robert Llewellyn-Bratcher, who showed us that freedom is born of courage and sacrifice, to Sir Caleb Azariah Paul Southwell, who taught us that progress is measured by how far it reaches into every home and uplifts every worker. Each gave us a piece of the foundation. Sir Joseph Nathaniel France reminded us that the health of a nation is inseparable from the health of its people, while Sir Simeon Daniel secured for Nevis a place of dignity within our federation, and ensuring that our two islands would always rise together. And in Sir Kennedy Alphonse Simmons, our living national hero and the first Prime Minister, we see resilience and perseverance. His steady hand that helped to bring us into independence. Together, their vision, courage, and sacrifice form not just our history, but our charge to protect what they built and to carry it forward into a future worthy of their names.
As the ceremony progressed, wreaths were laid at the monuments of 4 of the national heroes by officials and relatives. A bouquet was presented to the only living national hero, Dr. Kennedy Alphonse Simmons. Students from various schools joined in the wreath-laying ceremony, a sign of inclusion and a showcase of the legacies of these national figures to inspire young minds. The event was also marked by a parade featuring the Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force, members of the St. Kitts and Nevis Defence Force, and performances of the Defence Force Band, adding a sense of reverence and national pride to the occasion. The St. Kitts and Nevis Labour Party paid special tribute to the nation's first national hero on National Heroes Day, Sir Robert Llewellyn-Bradshaw, honouring his extraordinary contributions as both a founding member of the party and the first Premier of St. Kitts, Nevis and Anguilla. Party members, supporters and community leaders gathered at the Robert Llewellyn-Bradshaw Memorial Park in St. Paul's on September 16, 2025 to reflect on his pivotal role in shaping the nation's political and social landscape. Dr. Denzil Llewellyn-Douglas, constituency representative for Number 6, recounted Bradshaw's journey from humble beginnings to becoming the nation's first premier. He described the late statesman as a visionary who championed the rights of workers and the underprivileged. He credited Bradshaw's bold leadership with laying the foundation for modern democracy in the country.
His life and legacy are not just chapters of national history, but they are also living testimony of what strength, vision, and commitment can achieve, even when born out of humble beginnings, like here in St. Paul's. It was here in these fields and villages around that Sir Robert learned the values of hard work. He learned the value of solidarity and, of course, service. Those same values shaped his fight for the working people, for fair wages, for dignity, and for the right of our people to determine their own destiny. His story is forever tied to the aspirations of the people of St. Paul's and constituency Number 6. His story of success is to be emulated not only from those here in St. Paul's, St. Kitts, but from all around the entire country, St. Kitts and Nevis.
Dr. Douglas used the occasion to remind the audience of the importance of preserving the values the first national hero stood for, the ideals of leadership, service, progress, and dignity.
Those same values, as I said, shaped him, and now they are being echoed around the entire country at this time in particular of the year, so that they can shape our young people who will be future leaders of our country and will one day take the places like those national heroes we celebrate today. As we honor Sir Robert today, we must recognize that his vision calls us not only to remember, but to also recognize our responsibilities, the responsibility to ensure that this constituency, his home constituency, his birthplace, continues to enjoy strong, sustainable political representation. Representation that is faithful to the people's needs, attentive, of course, to their struggles, all of their struggles, and committed to advancing their progress towards a brighter future.
The senior minister said it is important to continue to work toward the vision that Bradshaw so passionately desired, which includes establishing critical institutions and policies that would improve education, healthcare, and opportunities for the youth of Constituency 6 and the country.
Our task is to carry forward the very progressive development that he dreamed of. Improving education, improving healthcare, improving housing conditions, and creating opportunities for our young people to thrive here at home, in this community, and in this entire constituency, and in our country. This means embracing innovation, supporting local enterprise, and preparing our people to compete and succeed in this rapidly changing, hostile world.
Ahead of the laying of wreaths, Dr. Douglas expressed that the gesture is a pledge of continuity, not allowing the legacy and light of the great statesman to go dim. He admonished the audience to protect Bradshaw's legacy, nurture it, and translate it into practical actions that would improve the lives of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. The Right Excellent Sir Robert Llewellyn Bradshaw was born on September 16, 1916, and died on May 23, 1978, at 61 years old. In 1996, Bradshaw was posthumously awarded the title of St. Kitts and Nevis' first national hero and is honored annually on National Heroes Day, which is observed on his birthday. It is also the birth date of another national hero, Sir Joseph Nathaniel France. On the inaugural National Heroes Day in 1998, the Golden Rock Airport in St. Kitts was renamed the Robert L. Bradshaw International Airport in his honor. Then in 2007, the Robert Llewellyn Bradshaw Memorial Park was dedicated at his birthplace in St. Paul's. The Windsor University School of Medicine campus in St. Kitts was also named in his honor and was dedicated on September 17, 2010.
In regional news,
Guyana more concerned about drug flights and sea trafficking. News Source Guyana reports.
President Irfan Ali said he has taken note of the rising tension between the U.S. and Venezuela, the possible implications for the Caribbean region as a zone of peace, and the stark warning issued to both Guyana and Trinidad by the Venezuelan defense minister that Caracas will retaliate if any attack against Venezuela is launched from either of the two countries.
Well, let me say very clearly that our sovereignty is our sovereignty. And what we do in relation to our sovereignty is our business.
In the past 2 weeks, the U.S. military has carried out 2 airstrikes on 2 vessels from Venezuela that were suspected of ferrying narcotics. The first strike killed 11 persons, while 3 persons were killed in the second strike. Questioned about whether he had concerns about those airstrikes and the taking of lives as against capture and prosecution, President Ali said as a government and the people, Guyana's priority is to ensure that the region remains a zone of peace. However, he said Guyana is also cognizant of the impact that crime has on the region and its people.
Whilst our priority is to ensure that this region remains a zone of peace, we are also conscious of the impact of transnational crime, drug trafficking, and other forms of illicit activities and the impact it can have on our people, the region, and our economy here and the region.
Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, Ecuador, Paraguay, and Argentina are part of a U.S.-led international coalition backing the crackdown on drug cartels in the region. President Ali said CARICOM and the U.S. are working together through the coalition to combat transnational crimes, and that is no secret. However, there have been growing concern internationally about the legality of the U.S. airstrikes and the killing of persons suspected to be drug traffickers. President Ali said what he is concerned about is the continuous use of international waters and the exclusive economic zones of various countries by criminals.
We are continuously concerned about criminals using international waters or countries' exclusive economic zone in destroying economies, destroying countries, destroying people. For a matter of fact, we have raised an alert about the overflights over Guyana of suspected narco traffickers and drug planes and their overflight over Guyana. And we have been talking to our partners to help support us in terms of our air surveillance and tracking system, because we don't want our territory to be used. We don't want our land or sea to be used by any criminal network. So that is of concern to me.
The president also said Guyana has a duty and responsibility to make the necessary investment to secure its borders and its people and the region, to allow it to remain a zone of peace.
CARICOM Building Code revision. Stakeholders meet to discuss energy efficiency. DBS St. Lucia has that story.
A high-level stakeholder meeting to revise the Energy Efficiency Building Code was held in St. Lucia on September 16th. The gathering brought together key organizations and partners focused on advancing sustainable practices and reducing energy consumption. Jason Andelcio, project manager of the Caribbean Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency, CCRE, outlined the organization's goals and expectations for the dialogue.
The current update is the natural next step towards aligning the code with advances in technology, evolving climate risk, higher performance expectations across our built environment. Our goal for 2025 is straightforward: a code that is more actionable, inclusive, and context-specific for CARICOM member states and the wider Caribbean.
World Bank country representative for the Eastern Caribbean, Alexander Agosti, underscored the crucial link between energy and business competitiveness, stressing the need for resilience in a vulnerable region.
In the Caribbean, energy access, as we've heard, is particularly critical due to the region's vulnerability to climate change and economic shocks. And therefore, a cleaner, sustainable, and more affordable energy system is not just a climate goal, it's an economic imperative for the region. So the building sector, in particular in the Caribbean, stands out as one of the biggest energy guzzlers in the region, and this causes fiscal stress to the economy and financial costs to consumers, as electricity costs, as we've heard, are some of the highest in the world due to the heavy dependence on imported diesel and oil. That is not only expensive, but whose steady supply is both uncertain and vulnerable.
Infrastructure Minister Stephenson King described the drive toward greater energy efficiency as ambitious but necessary, noting that buildings remain among the highest energy consumers across the Caribbean.
In many of our countries, including St. Lucia, they account for up to 40% of total energy consumption. This has implications for economic sustainability, energy security, and most critically, climate resilience.
Chair of the regional project team, Kurt Harris, outlined the next steps for implementing the revised energy efficiency building codes.
The next step after this particular workshop is the adoption of the recommendations for the revision. Then it would go to COTED, where the Council of Ministers would agree to adopt that particular code. It would go to the various territories for their adoption, and then you would begin the training and sensitization of professionals and the general public on the building code so that it can be implemented within the various member states.
The consultation drew engineers and architects from across the region who offered their expertise to update the building code 7 years since its last revision to ensure it meets today's challenges.
We now bring you these international reports.
Well, the European Commission has proposed suspending the bulk of a free trade agreement with Israel in response to its assault on Gaza City. That deal covers about a third of all Israeli goods exported to the European Union.
The aim is not to punish Israel. The aim is to improve the humanitarian situation in Gaza. All member states agree that the situation in Gaza is untenable. The war needs to end. The suffering must stop and all hostages must be released. We must use all the tools we have towards this outcome.
Hashim Al-Bara has more details from Brussels.
The EU has been trying for months to come up with a sanctions package against Israel, but there's been a huge divide between countries such as Germany, Italy and Hungary, who were saying that we should not be perceived to be punishing Israel, and other countries who were saying that it's about time for the EU to stand up to its ideals and impose sanctions, particularly the suspension of the entire trade association agreement with Israel. Now, to narrow differences between the two camps within the EU, they've decided to target some aspects of that association agreement. So the EU now is proposing to impose tariffs on Israeli goods estimated at more than $6 billion. These are Israeli imports into Europe, plus imposing sanctions on Israeli ministers Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir, and suspending a package of aid to Israel estimated at 20 million euros. You don't need to have consensus when it comes to imposing sanctions, but rather a majority. But these measures remain largely symbolic and don't meet the demands of the human rights activists and the hundreds of thousands of people who took to the streets across Europe saying that the EU has to show a tougher stance when it comes to sending a strong signal that it rejects the genocide and the relentless bombardment which is taking place across in Gaza. But as you know, this is the EU, a bloc that remains to be pretty much very divided about how to move forward when it comes to sanctioning Israel. Hashim Al-Bara, Al Jazeera, Brussels.
The Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, has ended his visit to Jordan. His discussions with Jordan's King Abdullah II are believed to have focused on security and Israel's war on Gaza. Their meeting came after an Arab-Islamic summit was held earlier this week in Doha, following Israel's attack on the Hamas delegation in the Qatari capital. Osama bin Javed has this from Amman.
There is symbolism to this visit. The first one after the attack by Israel on Qatar. The first by the Emir of Qatar to a state outside of his own country after this large meeting which took place at the Emergency Arab Islamic Summit, where leaders from the Arab and Islamic world came together to show solidarity with the state of Qatar and tell Qatar they stand with them, including the King of Jordan. It is the first visit after the visit of the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio as well. So a whole host of issues were on the table. On top of the priority was obviously the situation in Gaza, where both of these countries have been trying and negotiate a ceasefire and bring an end to the war. Obviously, aid supplies towards Gaza, which have been halted by Israel, was also expected to be discussed between these two leaders. And in terms of the region, there's a large cooperation, varied cooperation between these two countries, which is ongoing, and that includes Syria as well, where just 24 hours ago there's been a deal between the Jordanians, the Syrians, and the Americans to try and bring an end to the violence in Sweden and make a roadmap towards a peaceful solution. And on top of all of this are the bilateral ties, where both of these countries have at least $1 billion in terms of bilateral trade in a whole host of areas in the economy. So it was the first visit. The symbolism was there. A number of important issues came under discussion, and we believe that what the Qataris wanted to show was that they still stand tall with their commitment to the Palestinian cause, their commitment to try and negotiate a way out of all of the crises in the Middle East, and tell the world that they are still going to continue that pillar of their charter of their country, that they will negotiate between all of the sides where possible, because this is something that Qatar stands for, that Qatar believes in, and the Emir of Qatar wants to tell his neighbors, his region, and the rest of the world. Sama bin Javed, Al Jazeera, at the Makkah Military Airport.
After 9 months of holding the line, the Fed is finally set to blink. But how far will they go? Fed officials have spent months weighing competing risks, sticky inflation versus a weaker jobs market. They are ready to take a side. Markets have priced in a near certainty that the Fed will cut by quarter point. Investors will be looking to Fed Chair Jerome Powell, as well as parsing fresh economic projections that will likely provide clues on the future of interest rates. Economists largely expect officials to pencil in 2 more rate reductions this year that would be in line with the June projections. But markets want more. Traders are boosting bets of at least 1 jumbo cut by the end of the year. 3.8%. That's the UK rate of inflation for August, holding steady at the highest level in more than 18 months. Cheaper airfares were offset by prices in hotels and restaurants. Meanwhile, food inflation continued to rise. The figures highlight the headache that the Bank of England is facing when it meets on Thursday and could set the groundwork for a prolonged pause in borrowing costs. French Prime Minister Luc Cornu will be meeting with Socialist Party leaders in pivotal budget talks. The new Premier is expected to court the party's top brass with new proposals, including a wealth tax. The Socialist Party has become a swing voting bloc in a hung parliament that has toppled 2 governments in at least a year. But a path to a budget victory remains narrow and could lead to fresh elections. Shares of Baidu jumped by the most in over 2 years overnight after an analyst upgraded the Chinese internet firm. The stock climbed as much as 14% in Hong Kong on optimism over the potential of its in-house chip business. Chinese tech stocks rallied alongside as renewed bets on AI sent the sector to the highest in nearly 4 years. Meta, the company is set to introduce for the first time glasses with a screen, codenamed Hypernova. Reports have suggested that pricing for the device will come in at around $1,000 and could be as high as $1,400. Meta's ultimate goal is to create true augmented reality glasses, but that doesn't look likely until before 2027.
You were listening to the WINN FM 98.9 newscast. Our top stories were:
the daughter of Nevis's first premier and a national hero reminds St. Kitts Nevis citizens of her father's quest for secession.
Safe harbor to expand marina. St. Kitts Nevis Prime Minister says work has already started.
St. Kitts Nevis national heroes honored at the 2025 National Heroes Day ceremony. Dr. Denzel Douglas urges the citizens of St. Kitts Nevis to protect and nurture the legacy of Sir Robert Bradshaw.
Guyana more concerned about drug flights and sea trafficking. CARICOM Building Code revision. Stakeholders meet to discuss energy efficiency. Internationally, the European Union proposes suspension of trade concessions with Israel over Gaza war.
Thank you for listening.